What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So, Game 5 of the 2021 Western Conference Finals was held last night between the Los Angeles Clippers and the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix was at home in this game, and they came into the game holding a commanding 3-1 series lead over the Clippers. Um, this was a game where there will only be two outcomes. Either the Suns would end this series and go on to their third ever NBA Finals appearance, or the Clippers, with their backs against the wall, would extend the series into a Game 6 and play at their home and really make this, again, a series. Well, the latter is exactly what happened, and they were led by Paul George. Paul George had, I I think, from I might be wrong with this, but I think this may have been Paul George's best overall playoff performance. I think he may have had a 43-point game or 45-point game with the Pacers some years back. But when you look at the stage, the conference finals, you look at the shooting percentage, you look at when he was making these shots, how big those shots were down the stretch for the Clippers. I think this was his best playoff game of his career. He scored 41 points. He shot an unbelievable 15 of 20 from the floor and 3 of 6 from three-point range. Now, coming into this uh, game, Paul George had been very inefficient from the floor, only shooting 36% overall in this series, only shooting less than 27% from three-point range in this series. A lot of it had to do with shot selection. I think he was settling way too much for threes. And one of the common, um, one of the common, what am I trying to say? One of the common sayings or axioms, maybe axiom is a better term. One of the common axioms of basketball is that a lot of times to get your rhythm, there's two things that you should do. Get to the foul line if you're a great foul shooter, or take it to the basket, take it to the cup. Get a couple of layups, and oftentimes you seeing the basket go in the hole, does something psychologically for you, and it seems to a lot of times help guys who are struggling with their jump shot. But the fact remains, even just for the percentages, you have a better chance of making a basket that's within 1 or 2 feet of the basket than a shot that's 20 or 25 feet away. So Paul George didn't settle tonight, and he got a lot of help. Morris. Let's look at the scoring. Okay. Morris had 22 points. Reggie Jackson, 23 points. To me, Jackson and Morris have been their most consistent. Some of the Clippers have been their most consistent performers throughout this playoffs. Terrence Mann only scored 4 points, but um, I think Terrence Mann did a good job on the defensive end for the Clippers. Patrick Beverley had 7 points and 5 rebounds, but you never look at Patrick Beverley scoring. What he does doesn't often show up in the box score. His defense, the how he sometimes gets into his opponent's heads. The other things he does on the court. Um, DeMarcus Cousins finally got some playing time in this game, and he had a big effect on the outcome of this game. 15 points in 11 minutes of play. Is DeMarcus Cousins the guy that he once was? No. But is he a guy that could give you a lot of productivity? Hell yeah. The media, these guys don't know what the fuck they're talking about, man. A lot of these guys. You know what I'm saying? For the Phoenix Suns, DeAndre Ayton, 10 points, 11 rebounds. a solid double double, but not the impact that you expect from uh, Ayton. Devin Booker had 31 points, but it was a quiet 31. I mean, 31 points is 31 points. But this is why I sometimes say numbers can be misleading. If you watch the game, yeah, he scored 31 points, but it didn't seem to be buckets that were uh, having an effect on the flow, the line of the game, or yeah, he get a bucket, but then they come right back down and make a three. I mean, yeah, he scored 31 points, but they weren't impactful. Is what I'm trying to say. Um, Chris Paul had 22 points, 8 assists, good numbers. Chris Paul, though, I'm telling you, man, this is a flopping dude, man. Like some of the flopping that he did was just ridiculous. One time, man, the dude flopped back 25 feet from Paul George, like from contact, bare minimum contact. Even when he got entangled with Patrick Beverly, he did fall legitimately, but it came from him trying to simulate contact that really wasn't there. And at the end of the day, man, Chris Paul's a great player, man, but he's a flop artist. And, he can also be a dirty player, you know. But the Clippers were hungrier. And when the Clippers have their backs to the wall, they're a very, very dangerous team. And Phoenix is going to have to change their. I'm telling you, to me, Phoenix dropped an opportunity last night. They really dropped the ball on not coming out more aggressive, matching the Clippers' intensity, and closing the deal. Because now they're going to go back to LA for game 6. The Clippers have their backs to the wall. When the Clippers have their backs to the wall, despite the the fucked up coaching that Tyronn Lue provides, um, when they have their backs to the wall, they're a better team. They're a championship level team when they have their backs to the wall. The problem is that the Clippers can be very bipolar in their performance. Oftentimes when they relax too much, Uh, but I could now see this series going 7 games. I could very well see the Clippers winning game 6 and then going back to game 7 to Phoenix, and then the pressure's on Phoenix. Does Phoenix want to be one of these few teams to give up a 3-1 lead in the Western Conference Finals? You know, uh, I believe it's only happened 3 or 4 times in the history. I know that last time it happened when the Warriors came back from a 3-1 deficit against OKC. We all remember that one. It also happened in 1981, I believe, when the Boston Celtics came back from a 3-1 deficit against Philadelphia 76ers. A lot of that had to do with not just the fact that, Boston had great players, but it also had to do with the fact that uh, Billy Cunningham got outcoached by Bill Fitch. And I think it also happened in the 60s with Boston. I just can't remember what year. But anyway, um, I'm going to say this. I'm convinced that Paul George, talent wise, is a top 6 or 7 player in the NBA. Remember when he was playing in OKC with Russell Westbrook, he was an MVP candidate and a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. The problem, the only problem I see with Paul George is that sometimes pressure gets to him. Um, it can get to him. When he's had bad games, I think he can sometimes lose confidence and he can become a head case. But when he goes out there, and I think when he is just playing his game and not overthinking, that's when you see a guy that looks like a top 2 or 3 player in the league. Um, I'm also going to say this. I think he plays better without Kawhi Leonard in the lineup. I just think he plays better. Paul George has always been used to being the main offensive guy on his team. When he was with Indiana, even though what's his fucking name? David West. Even though David West was the leader, the veteran leader of those teams, Paul George was their number one scoring option. When he went to OKC, Russell Westbrook stepped back, became the second option, and Paul George had a 3 month run where he averaged 33 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, over 2 steals. And as I said before, not only was he an MVP candidate before he got hurt, he was also a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. But when he went to the Clippers, he took the Scottie Pippen role. And I think that sometimes he could be uncomfortable in that role. He was more submissive offensively. And he, when you're the secondary guy, sometimes I think you can settle. And I think that with Kawhi Leonard being out, I think Paul George was still kind of, in some ways, playing like Paul George with Kawhi Leonard in the lineup. And now without Kawhi Leonard, he has to revert back to how he was playing before, which was yes, he would shoot threes, but Paul George didn't just settle for this outside shots. Paul George would mix it up more. Paul George would take it to the cup occasionally. Paul George would shoot the mid range. Lately Paul George has been yakking up a lot of threes, and his game is better than that. He has a much more multifaceted game than that. So yes, I think that Paul George. I'm not saying the Clippers are better without Kawhi Leonard, uh, but Paul George I think is better without Kawhi Leonard in the lineup. And that's pretty much all I got to say. I think that Phoenix is still favored to win this series. They could go out there and win Game 6. They're the type of team that could do that. One other thing. Devin Booker has not been the same player since Game 1. He hasn't. Now he did come out and get 30 points today, but like I said, it wasn't we're not seeing the same Devin Booker that we saw in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. I think that the Clippers, those dogs, the Clippers have a team of alpha males. I think they've intimidated these Suns to a degree. And yes, I'm saying, even though I know this is a soft era of basketball compared to the past, most people would tell you. I think that the Clippers have they're kind of bullying a little bit the Suns. Some of them. Uh, I think they kind of have gotten a little bit in some of these guys' heads. Even though they're down 3-1, some of these guys are not playing very well. The Clippers could have easily, they could easily have won this series already if it wasn't for the poor coaching decisions of Tyronn Lue. You know, I think the Clippers feel like, even though they're down 3-2, I think the Clippers feel like they're the better team. And when you have a team that feels like they're the better team, and I think Phoenix in the back of their minds, some of them, I'm not talking about Paul George, Chris Paul, but some of these guys, I think with the Phoenix Suns, I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about Chris Paul, I'm not talking about Jay Crowder. They have some playoff experience. Chris Paul, a lot of playoff experience. Some of these guys are new to this. By comparison, the Clippers are veterans with a lot of playoff experience. I'm just saying, I think that Devin Booker, you know, Payne, I don't know. Some of these guys, I look at them, they look kind of soft. You know what I'm saying? I ain't trying to be funny there. I ain't trying to be funny and no shit like that. But some of these motherfuckers, they look a little soft. You know what I'm saying? They look a little bit, like you could fuck them up and shit. Cameron Payne and motherfuckers like that. They're like these motherfuckers, Terrence Mann and these motherfuckers like Terrence Mann and motherfucking goddamn Patrick Beverly. They're like in a fight. They fuck these motherfuckers up. You know what I'm trying to say? Hey, motherfuckers, these Clippers. I think they're gonna fuck these motherfuckers up. Is what I'm trying to say. That's why I don't think this series is going to end in Game 6. I think it's going to full 7 in this motherfucker. If you ask me. But, no. But you know what I'm saying. But tell me what you guys think.